The rain battered my face as I stood on the curb outside my own house, the door slamming shut behind me with a force that echoed in my chest. My suitcase, hastily packed with a few shirts and a toothbrush, sat soaked at my feet, a pitiful companion on my 60th birthday. My 3 children, Michael, Ethan, and Claire, had just told me, in voices cold as the November storm, that I was no longer welcome in the home I'd built for them. It wasn't just the words that stung, it was the way they looked at me, like I was a stranger who'd overstayed his welcome. Michael, my eldest, stood tallest, his suit crisp as he delivered the verdict. "Dad, we've talked. You're holding us back." Ethan, always the quieter one, avoided my eyes, while Claire, my little girl who once clung to my hand, crossed her arms and said, "It's time for you to go." I'd spent decades pouring my heart into this family, sacrificing dreams to give them everything: private schools, vacations, a roof over their heads. And now, on the day I turned 60, they'd tossed me out like yesterday's trash. I didn't beg. I didn't scream. I just picked up my suitcase and walked into the rain, my heart a lead weight in my chest. The truth was, I wasn't just any retired accountant with a modest pension. I'd been hiding something from them, something I'd planned to reveal tonight as my birthday gift to them. A $3 million fortune, carefully built over years of quiet investments. But as I trudged toward a cheap motel, the neon sign flickering in the distance, I decided they didn't deserve to know. Not yet. The motel room smelled of stale cigarettes and regret. I sat on the sagging bed, staring at the cracked ceiling, replaying every moment that led to this. I'd raised them alone after their mother, Ellen, passed away 15 years ago. Breast cancer took her fast, and I became both father and mother overnight. I thought I'd done right by them. Michael, now a lawyer. Ethan, a graphic designer. Claire, a marketing exec. But somewhere along the way, they'd grown entitled, resentful, convinced I was a burden rather than the foundation of their lives. It started subtly. Snide comments about my old-fashioned ways. Eye rolls when I suggested family dinners. They'd stopped inviting me to their lives, their successes, their worlds. Last month, Michael snapped when I asked about his latest case, saying, "Dad, you wouldn't get it. You're out of touch." Claire laughed it off, but her eyes were sharp, dismissive. Ethan just stayed silent, as always. I'd ignored the signs, thinking love would bridge the gap. I was wrong. The next morning, I woke to a text from my lawyer, Tom. "Everything's ready. Just need your signature." Tom had been my friend since college, the only one who knew about my fortune. Years ago, I'd started investing in tech startups, a risky move for an accountant who preached caution. But one of those startups hit big, a biotech firm that revolutionized cancer diagnostics. My shares skyrocketed, and I'd quietly amassed millions. I never told the kids. I wanted them to value me, not my money. I met Tom at a diner, the kind of place where the coffee's bitter but honest. He slid a folder across the table. "You sure about this, Henry?" he asked, his brow furrowed. The folder held my new will. I'd originally planned to split the fortune equally among Michael, Ethan, and Claire. But after last night, I'd called Tom at midnight, my voice shaking, and told him to change it. The kids would get nothing yet. Instead, I was setting up a trust, one they'd only access if they proved they could change. "I'm sure," I said, signing the papers. "They need to learn what family means." Tom leaned back, sipping his coffee. "You're playing a dangerous game. They might hate you for this." "They already do," I replied, my voice steady but hollow. I spent the next week in the motel, piecing together a plan. I wasn't going to disappear. I'd built that house, that life, and I wasn't ready to let go. But I needed them to see what they'd done, to feel the weight of their betrayal. So I started small. I texted Claire, asking if she wanted to meet for coffee. No reply. I called Ethan. It went to voicemail. Michael sent a curt message. "We're busy, Dad. Give us space." Space. As if I hadn't given them everything already. Then, a week after my birthday, something shifted. I was at the diner, nursing a plate of eggs, when my phone buzzed. It was Claire, her voice trembling. "Dad, we need to talk. Something's happened." I could hear the panic, the crack in her usual confidence. My heart skipped, not out of fear, but curiosity. What could shake her like this? I agreed to meet them at the house that evening. When I arrived, the air was thick with tension. Michael stood by the fireplace, arms crossed, his jaw tight. Ethan paced near the couch, his hands fidgeting. Claire sat at the dining table, her eyes red from crying. The untouched birthday cake still sat there, a mocking reminder of that night. "Dad," Claire started, her voice barely above a whisper. "We found some papers in your office. Investment records. Bank statements." She held up a folder, one I recognized instantly. My stomach twisted. I'd left it in my desk, assuming they'd never bother to look. "How much is it?" Michael cut in, his lawyer voice sharp. "3 million? More." I leaned back in the chair, studying them. "You went through my things." "We were cleaning out your office," Ethan mumbled, avoiding my gaze. We thought you were broke, Dad. You never said anything." I let the silence hang, heavy and accusing. They hadn't just thrown me out. They'd assumed I was nothing, a failure clinging to their success. But now, the truth was out, and their faces told me everything. Guilt, greed, regret. "Why didn't you tell us?" Claire asked, her voice breaking. "All this time, you had millions, and we thought. You thought I was a burden." I finished for her. "You threw me out on my birthday because you thought I had nothing to offer." Michael flinched. Ethan stopped pacing. Claire's tears spilled over. I stood, my voice calm but firm. "That money was supposed to be your inheritance. A gift for the family I thought we were. But you showed me who you really are." "Dad, we're sorry," Claire sobbed. "We didn't know." "Sorry doesn't fix this," I said. "But I'm not done with you. Not yet." I walked out, leaving them with the weight of their choices. The game had just begun. The rain had stopped, but the chill lingered as I walked back to the motel, my mind racing. My children's faces, Claire's tears, Michael's clenched jaw, Ethan's nervous pacing, stayed with me, burned into my memory. They'd found the papers, the proof of my fortune, and now they were scrambling, their carefully constructed dismissal of me crumbling under the weight of $3 million. I wasn't naive. I knew the money had changed the game, but not in the way they thought. They weren't sorry for throwing me out. They were sorry they'd misjudged my worth. That realization cut deeper than the eviction itself. But I wasn't ready to let them off the hook. If they wanted redemption, they'd have to earn it. Back at the motel, I pulled out my laptop and opened the trust documents Tom had sent. The new will was ironclad. The fortune would go to charity unless my kids met specific conditions. They'd have to prove they valued family over money, that they could rebuild what they'd broken. I hadn't figured out the exact terms yet, but I knew it wouldn't be easy. They'd spent years drifting away from me, and a single apology wouldn't bridge that gap. The next morning, I got a call from Michael. His voice was different, less sharp, almost cautious. "Dad, can we meet? Just you and me." I agreed, curious to see his angle. We met at a coffee shop, the kind of place he'd never set foot in when he thought I was just a washed-up accountant. He sat across from me, his suit slightly wrinkled, his eyes searching mine. "Dad, I messed up," he said, leaning forward. "We all did. But we can fix this. Let's talk about the money. How can we make this right?" I sipped my coffee, letting his words hang. "You think this is about the money?" He blinked, caught off guard. "Isn't it? You've got millions, Dad. We didn't know. We thought you were struggling. You thought I was nothing." I said, my voice low but steady. "You didn't ask me to leave because of money. You did it because you didn't want me around." Michael's face reddened, but he didn't argue. He knew I was right. "What do you want from us?" he asked finally. "I want you to remember what family means," I said. "You figure out how." I left him there, his coffee untouched, and headed to a meeting with Tom. He'd been digging into the kids' lives, at my request. I needed to know who they'd become, what drove them. Tom handed me a folder with details. Michael's law firm was struggling, buried under a high-profile case gone wrong. Ethan's freelance design work was barely paying the bills. Claire's marketing job was secure, but she was drowning in credit card debt from her lavish lifestyle. They weren't as successful as they'd pretended to be. "They're in over their heads," Tom said, shaking his head. "No wonder they flipped when they found those papers." I nodded, piecing together the puzzle. They'd thrown me out because they thought I was dragging them down, but they were the ones sinking. The irony wasn't lost on me. Over the next few days, I watched them unravel. Claire called, her voice softer, pleading. Dad, I didn't mean for it to happen like that. Can we just talk? Ethan sent a long email, rambling about how he'd always felt overshadowed by Michael, how he didn't know how to stand up to him. Michael kept texting, asking for meetings, offering vague apologies. But none of them addressed the real issue. They'd chosen themselves over me. I decided it was time to push back. I sent them each a letter, handwritten, because I wanted them to feel the weight of my words. You've got 1 month, I wrote. Prove to me you understand what you've done. Show me you're still my family. If you don't, the money goes to charity, and you get nothing. I didn't tell them about the trust conditions yet. I wanted to see what they'd do without a roadmap. The response was immediate. Claire showed up at the motel, banging on my door at 7 a.m. Her makeup was smudged, her eyes wide with desperation. Dad, please, she said, clutching my arm. We didn't know about the money. We thought you were, just getting by. We were wrong. Let us make it up to you. How? I asked, stepping back. What's your plan, Claire? She faltered, her hands twisting together. I don't know. We could move you back in. Start over. Start over, I repeated, my voice flat. You think it's that simple? She didn't have an answer. I closed the door, my heart heavy but resolute. Michael tried a different tactic. He invited me to his office, a sleek space with glass walls and a view of the city. He'd prepared a presentation, complete with charts, outlining how he'd manage my fortune if I handed it over. We could invest it, Dad, he said, his voice smooth, professional. Grow it for the family. I almost laughed. The family you kicked out. His smile faltered. That was a mistake. I'm trying to fix it. You're trying to control it, I said, standing. This isn't about money, Michael. It's about us. Ethan was the last to try. He showed up at the diner, looking like he hadn't slept in days. Dad, I didn't want to do it, he said, his voice barely audible. Michael and Claire, they decided, and I just went along. I'm sorry. I looked at him, my quiet son, always following, never leading. Why didn't you say something? I asked. He shrugged, his eyes on the table. I don't know. I was scared. I wanted to hug him, to tell him it was okay, but I couldn't. Not yet. Figure out what you stand for, Ethan, I said. Then we'll talk. By the end of the week, I'd moved out of the motel and into a small apartment Tom had found for me. It was simple, but it was mine. I wasn't ready to go back to the house, not yet. The kids were scrambling, each trying to win me over in their own way, but they still didn't get it. They thought apologies and promises would be enough. They didn't understand that I wasn't testing their words. I was testing their hearts. The apartment was small, but it felt like a fortress, a place where I could breathe without the weight of my children's betrayal pressing down on me. I'd given them a month to prove themselves, and 2 weeks in, they were floundering. Their attempts at reconciliation felt like performances, each one scripted to win my favor, not my trust. But I wasn't playing their game. I was playing mine. I spent my days reflecting, walking through the city, watching families in parks and cafes, wondering where I'd gone wrong. Had I been too soft? Too focused on providing? Ellen used to say I gave the kids too much, that they'd never learn to stand on their own if I kept catching them. Maybe she was right, but I couldn't change the past. All I could do was shape the future. Claire was the first to make a real move. She showed up at my apartment with a photo album, one I hadn't seen in years. It was filled with pictures from their childhood, Michael's first soccer game, Ethan's awkward school play, Claire's ballet recitals. She sat on my couch, flipping through the pages, her voice soft. I found this in the attic, she said. I forgot how much you did for us. I looked at the photos, memories flooding back. Me, younger, grinning as I held Claire on my shoulders. Ethan, pain on his face, laughing at some long-forgotten joke. Michael, serious even as a boy, clutching a trophy. Why now? I asked, my voice steady. She hesitated, her fingers tracing a photo of us at the beach. I thought maybe if you saw this, you'd remember we're still your family. I wanted to believe her. God, I did. But I'd seen too much. You don't get to use the past to erase the present, I said. You threw me out, Claire. On my birthday. Her face crumpled, but she nodded. I know. I'm trying, Dad. Try harder, I said, and she left, the album still on the couch. Michael's next attempt was bolder. He sent me an invitation to a family dinner at the house, promising it would be just like old times. I almost didn't go, but curiosity got the better of me. When I arrived, the table was set with Ellen's old china, the one we used for special occasions. Michael was in the kitchen, stirring something that smelled like his mother's lasagna recipe. Ethan was arranging napkins, his hands unsteady. Claire poured wine, her smile forced but hopeful. "We wanted to do this right," Michael said, sitting at the head of the table. "No fighting. Just us." I sat, watching them. The food was good, the conversation polite, but it felt like a stage play. They talked about their jobs, their lives, carefully avoiding the elephant in the room. Finally, I set down my fork. "Why am I here?" I asked. They froze. Ethan looked at Michael, who cleared his throat. "We want you back, Dad. We messed up. We know that." "You want me back," I repeated. "Or you want the money?" Claire's wine glass clinked against the table. Ethan's face went pale. Michael leaned forward, his voice low. "That's not fair. We're trying to fix this." "Then tell me why," I said. "Why did you throw me out? What did I do to make you think I didn't belong in my own home?" Silence. They looked at each other, waiting for someone else to speak. Finally, Ethan mumbled, "We thought you were dragging us down. You kept talking about the past, about Mom, about how things used to be. We wanted to move forward." "Move forward," I said, the words bitter in my mouth. "By erasing me?" "We didn't mean it like that," Claire said, her voice shaking. "We were wrong, Dad. We see that now." I stood, my chair scraping the floor. "You see it because you found those papers. If you hadn't, I'd still be in that motel." I left them there, the lasagna untouched, the wine souring in their glasses. They were trying, I'd give them that, but it wasn't enough. Not yet. The next day, I met with Tom again. He'd drafted the trust conditions, based on our late-night talks. "You're asking a lot of them," he said, handing me the document. "You sure they can handle it?" "They'll have to," I said, scanning the pages. The conditions were simple but brutal. Each child had to complete a task that forced them to confront their flaws. Michael, the leader, had to volunteer at a community center, giving back without expecting reward. Ethan, the follower, had to create something original, a piece of art that expressed who he was without anyone's influence. Claire, the materialist, had to live on a budget for a month, no credit cards, no luxuries. "They won't like it," Tom said, chuckling. "Good," I replied. "They need to feel what it's like to lose something." I sent the conditions to them in another letter, along with a deadline, 2 weeks. If they failed, the money would go to a cancer research foundation in Ellen's name. I didn't expect them to succeed, not because they couldn't, but because they'd never had to fight for anything before. To my surprise, Ethan was the first to act. He called me, his voice nervous but determined. "I'm working on something, Dad. A painting. Can I show you when it's done?" I told him yes, my heart softening despite myself. Maybe he was starting to understand. Claire called next, her tone defiant. "This budget thing is ridiculous, Dad. I can't live like this. But I'm doing it." I could hear the strain in her voice, the struggle of living without her usual crutches. It was a start. Michael was the holdout. He sent a text, short and angry. "This is a game to you, isn't it?" I didn't reply. He'd have to figure it out on his own. As the days passed, I watched from a distance, my heart torn between hope and doubt. They were trying, but was it for me or for the money? I didn't know, but I was starting to see glimpses of the kids I'd raised, the ones who'd once loved me without question. Maybe, just maybe, we could find our way back. The city felt different now, sharper, as if the buildings themselves were watching me, waiting to see what I'd do next. My children were grappling with the trust conditions, and I could feel the tension radiating from them, even from miles away. I'd given them a chance to prove themselves, but I wasn't holding my breath. Trust, once shattered, doesn't piece itself back together easily. Ethan was the first to show progress. He invited me to his small apartment, a cluttered space filled with half-finished canvases and the faint smell of turpentine. He stood nervously by a covered easel, his hands twitching. "I did what you asked," he said, pulling the cloth away. The painting was raw, vibrant, a chaotic swirl of colors depicting a family of four, fractured but reaching for each other across a stormy sky. I saw Ellen in the golden hues, me in the steady blues, and the kids in the jagged reds and greens, fighting to connect. "It's us," Ethan said, his voice barely audible. "I didn't know how to say it before, but I'm sorry, Dad. I should have stood up for you." I studied the painting, my throat tight. It wasn't just art. It was a confession, a glimpse into the sun I'd almost given up on. "It's beautiful, Ethan," I said, and for the first time in weeks, I meant it. "Keep going." Claire's journey was messier. She called me daily, venting about the budget challenge. "Do you know how hard it is to live on $500 a month?" she snapped one evening, her voice crackling through the phone. "I can't even buy coffee." I listened, letting her rant, knowing this was the point. Claire had always defined herself by what she could buy, what she could show off. Stripping that away was forcing her to face herself. One afternoon, she showed up at my apartment with a grocery bag. "I made dinner," she said, her voice a mix of pride and exhaustion. Inside were ingredients for spaghetti, cheap but carefully chosen. We cooked together, the kitchen filled with the clatter of pots and her nervous laughter. As we ate, she admitted, "I've been a brat, Dad. I thought money made me better than you. I was wrong." I nodded, twirling my fork. "You're learning, Claire. That's enough for now." Michael was the hardest. He ignored the community center task for days, sending me texts about how demeaning it was, how he was too busy saving his firm. I didn't respond. If he wanted to fail, that was his choice. But then, one evening, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was Maria, the director of the community center. "Your son's here," she said, her voice warm. "He's been helping with the kids program. He's good with them." I drove to the center, a squat building in a rough part of town. Michael was there, surrounded by a group of kids, teaching them how to play chess. His suit was gone, replaced by a plain t-shirt, his face relaxed in a way I hadn't seen in years. When he saw me, he froze, then walked over. "I didn't do this for you," he said, his voice gruff. "I did it because it's the right thing." I raised an eyebrow. "Is it?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Okay, maybe it's for you too." "I'm trying, Dad." For the first time, I saw a crack in his armor, a hint of the boy who used to ask me for advice. "Keep trying," I said, and left him to his chess game. With the deadline looming, I started to see changes. Ethan was painting more, his work gaining confidence. Claire was budgeting better, even finding joy in small things like cooking. Michael was at the community center every evening, his arrogance softening with each kid he helped. But I wasn't ready to let them off the hook. They'd hurt me deeply, and I needed to know their change was real, not just a performance for the money. I called a family meeting at my apartment, the first time we'd all been together since the dinner. They sat on my worn couch, looking like kids waiting for a scolding. I held up the trust documents. "You're doing the tasks," I said. "But this isn't about checking boxes. It's about who you are." Claire's eyes filled with tears. "We're trying, Dad. We want you back." "Back where?" I asked. "In the house you kicked me out of? Or in your lives?" Ethan spoke up, his voice steady. "In our lives. We were wrong, Dad. We took you for granted." Michael nodded. "We thought we didn't need you. But we do." I looked at them, my heart aching. I wanted to believe them, but I'd been burned before. "Words aren't enough," I said. "Show me." The next week was a blur of small gestures. Ethan invited me to an art show where his painting was displayed, the crowd's praise lighting up his face. Claire started volunteering at a food bank, her stories about the people she met filled with a new kind of empathy. Michael organized a fundraiser for the community center, his legal skills put to use for something bigger than himself. But the real test came unexpectedly. I got a call from Tom late one night. "Henry, there's a problem with the trust," he said, his voice tense. "A loophole. The kids could challenge it in court, take the money without meeting your conditions." I sat back, my mind racing. Would they do it? Would they choose the money over me, again? I didn't tell them about the loophole. Instead, I watched, waiting to see what they'd do when the pressure was on. The deadline was 3 days away, and I could feel the storm coming. The air in my apartment felt heavy, like the calm before a storm you know is coming. The deadline for the trust conditions was 3 days away, and Tom's warning about the loophole gnawed at me. My kids were making progress. Ethan's art, Claire's humility, Michael's service, but I couldn't shake the fear that they'd betray me again if given the chance. Money has a way of twisting even the best intentions. I didn't tell them about the loophole. Instead, I invited them to dinner at a quiet restaurant, a neutral space where we could talk. They arrived together, a rare sight. Michael wore a simple sweater, not his usual suit. Claire's makeup was minimal, her usual glamour replaced by something softer. Ethan carried a sketchbook, his fingers stained with charcoal. They looked nervous, but there was a warmth in their eyes I hadn't seen in years. "Dad, we've been thinking," Claire started, her voice steady but earnest. "We don't want the money to come between us anymore." I raised an eyebrow, skeptical. "You say that now?" "No, really," Ethan chimed in. "I've been painting, Dad. Not for the trust, but because you believed in me. I don't care about the money." Michael nodded. "I've been at the community center every night. Those kids, they need someone to show up for them. Like you showed up for us." I listened, my heart caught between hope and caution. They sounded sincere, but I'd heard pretty words before. "What's changed?" I asked. 2 months ago, you threw me out. Now you're sitting here, acting like a family again." Claire reached across the table, her hand hovering near mine. "We were selfish, Dad. We thought we were better than you, that we didn't need you. But we do. Not for the money, for you." I wanted to believe them. Every fiber of my being ached to pull them close, to forgive and forget. But the memory of that rainy night, my suitcase at my feet, held me back. "Prove it," I said. "Not to me, to yourselves." The next day, I got a call from Maria at the community center. "Your kids are here," she said, her voice bright. "All 3 of them. They're planning something big." Curious, I drove to the center. The parking lot was buzzing with activity. Tables set up with food, kids running around with balloons, volunteers hanging decorations. Michael was directing traffic, his voice calm but authoritative. Claire was handing out snacks, laughing with a group of teenagers. Ethan was painting a mural on the center's wall, a vibrant scene of kids playing under a bright sun. "What's this?" I asked, approaching Michael. He grinned, a rare sight. "A community day? We organized it. Figured the kids deserved something special." Claire joined us, her apron smudged with flour. "We used our own money, Dad. No credit cards, no loans. Just us." Ethan looked up from his mural, paint on his cheek. "It's for you too, to show you we're serious." I stood there, watching my kids work together, not for me or the money, but for something bigger. For the first time, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe they were changing. Maybe we could be a family again. But then Tom called that evening, his voice grim. "Henry, I got a tip. Michael's been asking around about the trust. He's talking to lawyers." My heart sank. "What kind of lawyers?" "The kind who exploit loopholes," Tom said. "I don't know if he's serious, but he's digging." I hung up, my hands shaking. Was this all an act? Was Michael playing me, organizing community days while plotting to take the money? I didn't know, but I had to find out. The next morning, I confronted him. I found him at the community center, setting up chairs for another event. "Michael," I said, my voice low, "are you looking into the trust?" He froze, his face paling. "Who told you that?" "Doesn't matter. Is it true?" He set down the chair, his shoulders slumping. "I was curious, Dad. I asked a colleague about trust law. Not to challenge it, just to understand." "Understand what?" I pressed. "What you're doing," he said, meeting my eyes. "I wanted to know why you're making us jump through hoops. But I'm not fighting you. I swear." I studied him, searching for the lie. But his eyes were clear, his voice steady. "If you're lying," I said, "you'll lose more than the money." "I know," he said, and for the first time, I believed him. The deadline arrived, and I called them to my apartment. They sat across from me, nervous but hopeful. I held up the trust documents, my voice calm. "You've done the tasks. Ethan, your art is honest. Claire, you've learned to live simply. Michael, you're giving back. But this isn't over." I slid a new document across the table. "This is a new trust. The money's still there, but it's not yours yet. You'll get it when I'm gone. If you keep showing me you're the family I raised." Claire's eyes welled up. "Dad, we don't want the money. We want you." Ethan nodded. "We're not perfect, but we're trying." Michael leaned forward. "We'll keep trying. For you." I looked at them, my kids, flawed but fighting. For the first time in months, I felt like a father again. Then let's start over, I said. But this time, we do it right. The new trust was a line in the sand, a promise that the money wouldn't define us. My kids had passed the first test, but I wasn't naive enough to think the journey was over. Redemption isn't a single moment. It's a series of choices, day after day, and I needed to see if they could keep making the right ones. We started small. Sunday dinners at my apartment became a ritual. The four of us crowded around a folding table, eating takeout or Claire's latest budget-friendly recipe. The conversations were awkward at first, full of pauses and careful words, but over time, they softened. Ethan would sketch on napkins, sharing ideas for new paintings. Claire told stories about the food bank, her voice alive with purpose. Michael, usually so guarded, started opening up about his firm's struggles, even asking for my advice. It wasn't perfect. There were fights, sharp words about old wounds, moments when I wondered if we'd ever truly heal. One night, Claire snapped at me for mentioning Ellen, saying, "You always bring her up, Dad. It's like you're stuck in the past." I bit back a retort, remembering that healing takes time. Instead, I said, "She's part of us, Claire. We don't forget her." She apologized the next day, showing up with coffee and a sheepish smile. "I'm learning, Dad," she said. "It's hard, but I'm trying." Ethan's art show was a turning point. He'd been invited to display his work at a local gallery, a big step for someone who'd always doubted himself. The night of the opening, I stood in the crowded room, watching him talk to strangers about his paintings. His latest piece, a quiet portrait of our family sitting together under a tree, brought tears to my eyes. He'd captured us, not as we were now, but as we could be. After the show, he pulled me aside. "Dad, I sold 3 pieces tonight," he said, his voice trembling with excitement. "I'm going to use the money to start a free art class for kids at the community center." I hugged him, my chest tight with pride. "That's my boy," I whispered. Claire's transformation was quieter, but no less profound. She'd stuck to the budget, even after the trust's deadline passed. One evening, she showed me a spreadsheet tracking her expenses, her face glowing with pride. "I paid off half my credit card debt," she said. "It's not much, but it feels free." "You're doing good, kid," I said, and she beamed, the same smile she'd had as a little girl. Michael was the slowest to change, but when he did, it hit hard. His firm was on the brink of collapse, a fact he'd hidden from me until one night when he showed up at my apartment, his eyes bloodshot. "I'm losing everything, Dad," he said, his voice breaking. "I thought I could fix it, but I can't." I sat him down, poured him a drink, and listened. He told me about the case that had gone wrong, the clients who'd walked away, the loans piling up. For the first time, he wasn't the confident lawyer. He was my son, scared and lost. "Let me help," I said, and he looked at me like I'd offered him the moon. We spent the next week going over his firm's books, my old accounting skills coming back like muscle memory. I didn't give him money. That wasn't the point. Instead, I showed him how to restructure, where to cut costs, who to call for new clients. By the end, he had a plan, and more importantly, he had hope. "You didn't have to do this," he said as we finished. "After everything we did to you. You're my son," I said simply. "That's enough." The community center became our common ground. Michael kept volunteering, teaching chess, and now helping with legal clinics for low-income families. Claire started a cooking class, using her budget skills to teach others how to make meals on a dime. Ethan's art classes were a hit, kids flocking to him with wide-eyed enthusiasm. I joined them sometimes, helping where I could, feeling like a father again. But the shadow of the loophole lingered. Tom called me one morning, his voice urgent. "Henry, I found out who tipped Michael about the trust." It was his colleague, trying to stir up trouble. Michael shut him down, said he wasn't interested. Relief washed over me, but I needed to hear it from Michael. I called him to the diner, the same one where this all began. "Did you know about the loophole?" I asked, my voice steady. He nodded, his face grim. "Yeah, I told him to drop it. I don't want the money if it means losing you again." I believed him. For the first time, I truly believed him. As we sat there, sharing a plate of fries, I felt something shift. The anger I'd carried since that rainy night was fading, replaced by something warmer, something real. We weren't fixed, not completely, but we were building something new. Spring came, and with it, a sense of renewal I hadn't felt in years. The apartment was too small for all of us, so I moved back into the house, the one I'd built for my family. The kids helped me unpack, their laughter filling the rooms where silence had once reigned. We weren't the same family we'd been before that rainy night, but maybe that was okay. We were something better, flawed, human, and trying. The trust was still in place, the money untouched. I decided to keep it that way, a safety net for their futures, but not a crutch. They didn't ask about it anymore, and I didn't bring it up. The fortune had been a catalyst, a harsh light that exposed our cracks, but it was our choices that were mending them. Ethan's art classes had grown, the community center now a hub for kids who reminded me of him. Quiet, unsure, but bursting with potential. He'd started painting again, not for money or approval, but for himself. One afternoon, he showed me a new piece, a portrait of me sitting on the porch, my face lined but peaceful. "This is how I see you now, Dad," he said. Strong. Claire had paid off her debt and kept volunteering at the food bank. She'd found a new job, one that paid less but made her happy. "I don't need to be rich," she told me one evening, as we planted flowers in the backyard. "I just need this." She gestured to the house, to us, her smile brighter than any designer bag she'd once coveted. Michael's firm was back on track, thanks to the plan we'd built together. He still volunteered at the community center, but now he was teaching a class on financial literacy, something I'd suggested. "You're rubbing off on me, Dad," he said with a grin, and I laughed, the sound lighter than it had been in months. We celebrated my 61st birthday together, no cake left untouched this time. The kids had planned it themselves, nothing extravagant, just a barbecue in the backyard, music playing, neighbors stopping by. Ethan sketched caricatures of everyone, Claire grilled burgers, and Michael told stories that had us all in stitches. As the sun set, I looked at them, my kids, and felt a peace I thought I'd lost forever. Later that night, after the guests had gone, we sat on the porch, the air warm with the promise of summer. Claire leaned her head on my shoulder, something she hadn't done since she was a girl. "We almost lost you," she said softly. "You didn't," I said, squeezing her hand. "You found me." Michael cleared his throat, his voice thick. "We're not perfect, Dad, but we're here, and we're not going anywhere." Ethan nodded, his eyes shining. "We're family." I looked at them, my heart full. The money was still there, a silent presence, but it didn't define us anymore. We'd been through the fire, betrayal, regret, redemption, and come out stronger. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew we'd face it together. As I went to bed that night, I found the photo album Claire had brought me months ago. I flipped through it, lingering on a picture of us from years ago. Ellen, me, and the kids, laughing on a beach. I smiled, tracing her face, then closed the album and placed it on the shelf. We weren't that family anymore, but we were something new, something real. The next morning, I called Tom. "Update the trust," I said. "They've earned it. But not yet. Let's give them time to keep proving it." He chuckled. "You're a tough old man, Henry." "Damn right," I said, and hung up, ready to face whatever came next with my family by my side.